Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly behind the heavy velvet curtains of a medieval palace, past the torchlit corridors and down into the secret wing where no one speaks above a whisper. You're 13, barefoot on marble, wearing a tunic too fine for someone born in a pigsty. Your skin is oiled, your hair threaded with crushed rose petals. And though the cushions are soft and the incense is sweet, you are not free. You are being groomed, not for war, not for scholarship, but for silence, obedience, and someone else's pleasure. You probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far this sleepy little history club reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You weren't supposed to matter. A third son of a field servant, maybe. The kind of boy whose name was spoken once at birth and never carved into anything. But then came that day, market day, maybe when someone spotted you, a court official, a eunuch, or a bored noblewoman scouting for softness in the crowd. The word used wasn't kidnapped. No, it was selected. That made it sound almost holy. You were bathed so many times your skin stung. Someone taught you to bow correctly, to sit without wrinkling your robe, to hold a wine jug just so, because yes, even at 13, you were expected to pour, smile, and keep secrets. In some courts, like those of the Abbasid Caliphate or the Chinese Tang Dynasty, male concubines weren't rare at all. They were decor, status symbols, as interchangeable as the jade statues lining the walls. And like those statues, you were not supposed to speak unless prompted. Historians still argue whether certain palaces truly institutionalized boy concubine systems or if the accounts are just scandal-fed exaggeration. But the records speak of court favorites in terms soft enough to hide the iron behind them. Your handlers might have told you that you were special, destined for favor. But the truth felt more like a transaction than a destiny. At first, it's easy to believe the illusion. You're dressed in the finest silks, colors you've never seen before, with names you can't pronounce. You sleep on a mattress stuffed with goose down, not hay. The air smells of cardamom and honeyed wine. You are told not to worry about the outside world anymore, and that might seem like a gift until you realize it means you'll never return to it. One morning, you're handed a scroll of poetry in a language you don't speak, told to memorize the verses by sunset. A lesson in charm, they say. A week later, you're fitted for shoes you'll only wear once to walk in a procession, where you'll stand behind someone far more important and pretend not to exist. Your identity is now curated, like a porcelain doll painted anew each day. You begin to forget your village dialect. You never see the stars anymore. A fringe record from a minor court in India even mentions concubines trained to play the harp, but never allowed to sing because their voices were thought to distract from the purity of their appearance. Think about that. Your music is welcome, but not your breath. Still, sometimes the attention feels like love. When a prince compliments your walk, when a noble gives you a peach for no reason, that fluttering in your chest? Not love. Just the leftover instincts of a child trained to obey. Your tutors remind you to always smile with your eyes, because the mouth can lie too easily. You're warned that real affection is for fools. You're not here to be loved, you're here to be beautiful, like a vase, until you're dropped. And here's the strange part. You start to believe that's enough. That being desired is the same thing as being seen. You cling to compliments like rope. You feel a quiet pride when someone chooses you for their banquet seat. You start to think you have some control until you're told to serve wine while blindfolded. As a game for guests. It's at this stage that the soft gilding starts to flake. You hear whispers about boys who were sent away. You don't know where. One disappeared after accidentally spilling a drink. Another after looking too long at a visiting diplomat. You wonder how much of your life is yours, and how much has already been pawned off behind your back. The strange, cruel reality is that you're trapped in velvet chains. You want to escape, but the guards know your name. You want to scream, but the palace has trained you to whisper. You dream of being a soldier or a priest or even a merchant, but you wake each morning to the scent of jasmine oil and your own carefully arranged smile in the polished bronze mirror. You learn the hierarchy, not through books, but glances. Who steps aside for whom? Who gets fresh figs? Who gets leftovers? You are praised for stillness, not thought. The less you speak, the more they like you. And so one day, you stop speaking even inside your own mind. By the end of your first year, you've forgotten the feel of dirt beneath your feet. The boy who once ran wild is gone, replaced by a silent ornament too afraid to breathe wrong. You're 17 now, 4 years into your gilded captivity, and the silk no longer feels like luxury. It clings too tightly when you sweat and itches where your skin has grown thin from scented exfoliants. The smiles of the other concubines, those boys who arrived after you, or long before, have sharpened. There's something behind them now, a flicker of calculation. They ask about your health with concern too polished, too smooth. No one here truly hopes you're well, not unless your misery benefits them. You learn to navigate the palace not just by its architecture, but by the invisible web of loyalties and betrayals that pulse beneath it. You know which corridors carry sound too well. You know whose chambers are safe for resting your eyes, and whose doors should never be approached, even when summoned. There are nights when you're summoned. Not always to a bed sometimes, just to recline by a noble's side, offer a bowl of dates, entertain them with a poem you memorized at 12. But always, always under the weight of expectation. Your worth lies in how well you keep the fantasy alive, the beautiful, obedient boy with no past and no needs. You're the air freshener in a room that reeks of power. Jealousy, in this environment, is not an emotion, it's a currency. One that buys favors and ensures survival. The younger boys start copying your walk. One dyes his hair to match yours. You hear your own laugh echoed badly from the end of the corridor. It's both flattering and terrifying. Because in this game, the closer someone mimics you, the more likely they are to replace you, and you've seen it happen. The boy named Anwar, who used to share sweetmeats with you in the laundry courtyard, is now rarely seen. He tripped while serving tea, that's all. One moment, he's next to you practicing an aria for a private concert. The next, he's just gone. Historians still argue whether the vanishing of concubines in certain royal households was systemic or situational, whether they were quietly killed, reassigned to labor, or simply erased from records to preserve a fiction of perfection. Whatever the truth, Anwar didn't say goodbye. You try not to make friends. Or worse, fall in love. You almost did once. He was a year older, with calloused hands and a quiet laugh that made you feel normal for 2 seconds. You spoke after curfew, whispered dreams like fools. And then one night, he was caught sneaking a dried flower into your chamber, for symbolism, for sentiment. The very things this place punishes most. You weren't whipped, not physically, but they made you kneel in the garden pool, freezing, while others paraded past, laughing. That was punishment enough. Shame is a powerful glue. It sticks to your skin long after the water evaporates. Still, the politics of the harem offer small opportunities for survival. You learn who the head eunuch favors. You share fruit with the right chambermaid. You flatter the elderly concubine, whose tongue has grown bitter with years and who now plays puppet master behind the curtains. Her name is Yasira. Everyone calls her the Pillow Queen. She knows every secret. She tells you over a bowl of pomegranate seeds that if you want to survive past 20, you must never be too noticeable for too long. That night, you sleep upright against the wall, terrified to wrinkle your robe or misplace your slippers. Every breath is a gamble. Meanwhile, the royal court is a blur of wine, dust, and sweat. You don't attend state dinners, of course, but you know what follows them. A visiting noble may ask for entertainment, a song, a dance, sometimes a story. You're always prepared. Because once, a boy wasn't. He didn't remember the last stanza of the song. The noble was offended. The boy cried. That was the end of him. There's a fringe account from the palace of Al-Andalus that describes concubines being taught to read poetry upside down, to impress guests by holding the book sideways in a game of drunken intellectualism. You tried it once, alone, and got dizzy. You laughed. But then you remembered you don't laugh anymore unless told. One day, a rival accidentally spills perfume on your pillow. Another one replaces your embroidered slippers with a mismatched pair. You realize you're being hunted, socially. Not to be killed, but to be disgraced, demoted, forgotten. Because disgrace is worse than exile in this world. It means you're still alive but invisible. You start sleeping with one eye open, literally. You fake a cough to get out of performances. You smile only when spoken to. You become smaller, paler, less memorable. It works for a time, but you hate it. You miss being adored, even if it was never real. And then something shifts. A new concubine arrives, 15, radiant, a dancer by training. He bows deeper than you ever did. He says your name like a prayer. You feel it all over again, that dangerous fluttering of the heart. But you know better now. You smile and walk away. You don't get attached anymore, not because you're cold, but because love here always ends with silence. You're 20 now, that magical, dangerous age when you're still beautiful, but no longer novel. The petals of youth haven't fallen yet, but they've started to curl. The courtiers glance at you and then past you. The handmaidens who used to giggle when you passed now barely lift their eyes. The silk you wear is still embroidered, but the thread is coarser. You've been replaced before you were even dismissed. And then, one morning, you're summoned not by a prince or a court musician, but by the chief minister himself. You're told to bathe, dress in gold, and be ready to smile. Something bad is about to happen. The ride is quiet. You sit in a lacquered carriage drawn by 4 white horses, rocking gently across stones you once thought you'd never touch again. You recognize none of the countryside. You're no longer in the palace. But you're not free, either. The minister, gray-bearded and unreadable, explains nothing. The guards offer polite silence. Eventually, you arrive at a strange compound, a visiting delegation's estate. Foreign, fragrant with unfamiliar incense. The language is clipped, the food spiced differently. You are not here as a guest. You are here as a gift. This happened more often than most textbooks admit. Male concubines, particularly those trained in palace etiquette, were sometimes loaned to ambassadors, generals, or allied royalty. Sometimes to seduce, sometimes to spy, sometimes as proof of generosity. Historians still argue whether this constituted diplomacy or exploitation. But to you, it's clear. You're a playing piece in a game you don't even understand. Your new host is a duke, greedy eyes, thick fingers, wine-stained breath. He laughs too loudly and touches your shoulder like it belongs to him. The minister is all smiles as he hands you over, saying things like, "Our court's finest treasure, and may this token of peace bring our nations closer." You stand there, dressed like a prince and feeling like a coin. The estate is colder than the May palace. The servants don't bow. The halls echo with different rhythms. And here's the most brutal twist. You're not even the only concubine. There are others, male and female, some bruised, some bitter. They don't look at you as a rival. They look at you like meat that hasn't spoiled yet. For months, you live in limbo. You're no longer in training, but you're not respected either. You are passed around between feasts. made to recite poetry in a language you barely know. The Duke enjoys humiliating you with foreign riddles. You answer them wrong on purpose. There's no prize for being clever here, only more attention. One of the older concubines, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, tells you to feign sickness. You do. It doesn't work. The Duke sends a physician who bleeds you until your knees buckle. When you're better, they celebrate your recovery with more wine and more hands that don't ask permission. There's a moment when it almost ends. During a hunt, the Duke is thrown from his horse. He's unconscious for a full day. The estate goes silent. You think just for a heartbeat that this is your chance. But the guards never look away. And by morning, the Duke is drinking again. Your body once more property of a powerful man with a bad temper. Strangely, it's not the worst period of your life. There's a rhythm to the cruelty. A schedule. You wake. You dress. You serve. You endure. You forget your real name. And then, one evening, something even stranger happens. You're summoned back to the palace. The return is not triumphant. You're thinner, paler. Someone clucks their tongue at your posture. But a few remember you. Ysera, still alive somehow, still terrifying, nods when she sees you. Back from the dead, she whispers. Now stay quiet. Your room is no longer yours. The young dancer who once bowed at your feet now sleeps in your bed. You're given quarters near the storage corridor. You're no longer a centerpiece, you're a curtain puller. You help dress others. You whisper reminders of etiquette. You teach younger boys how to hold a tray without trembling. That's when the power games change again. You discover that knowledge has value. That memories are currency. You know which noble has a birthmark, which prince prefers boys who sing in a falsetto. You know the Duke's secrets. You know things no one wants written down. So you begin to speak softly, strategically. You don't blackmail. You advise. You suggest. You remind. A scribe begins to visit you. He listens. He records. You're told that your observations are being compiled into a private book of conduct. Whether it's real or not doesn't matter. You've become useful again. A scroll from medieval Baghdad describes how certain concubines were trained. Not just in sensual arts, but in politics and surveillance. You suspect you've become one of them, albeit unofficially. You never enter chambers anymore. You're not summoned for music or massage, but you're always near. You whisper into ears. You write notes with invisible ink, lemon juice, and a hot spoon. And yet, it's a colder life than ever. The intimacy is gone. So is the illusion of being cherished. You are no longer wanted, only needed. And only until you're not. Still. For now you survive. And in this place, that's the only victory worth chasing. You're 26 now. A ghost in the corridors you once lit up with your presence. The courtiers no longer pause when they pass you. The new concubines glance sideways, then away. You've become a reminder of something uncomfortable. What happens after the bloom fades? You wear darker robes now. Earth tones, no embroidery. You keep your hair shorter. More practical. Less touchable. No one says it aloud, but your expiration date has passed. One morning, during a spring inspection, the head steward forgets your name. Calls you by someone else's. You correct him gently. He shrugs and walks on. That shrug, that's what your youth has been reduced to. Still, you serve. You tidy, you listen, you remain useful. But usefulness is not safety. One afternoon, a familiar voice echoes in the courtyard. The Duke. The same one who once toyed with you like a decorative goblet. His arrival is announced with far more fanfare than your return ever was. You stiffen when you hear his name. You feel your shoulders tighten, as if they still remember his hands. He's older now. Rounder. But his eyes still search for something he can claim. He sees you. Of course he does. You've been careful too. Stay invisible, but predators always sniff out old prey. He calls for you. The court obliges. Now officially, you're just an attendant. You are not on the roster of concubines anymore. But unofficially, hierarchies crumble when favors are owed. The Duke has leverage. He asks the king for a private moment with an old friend. And suddenly, you're in a scented room with rose-colored glass and no guards. The silence hangs heavy. He doesn't touch you. Not this time. Instead, he reminisces. Tells stories about your service. As if those years were golden. As if you were lucky. You nod when required. You smile where expected. But your pulse is hammering. Not because of fear, because of rage. You thought you buried that rage. But it's still there. Alive and sour beneath your skin. You try to make yourself forget. You stare at the window, counting the birds. You remember the old eunuch's advice. Become fog. Be ungraspable. So you float through the conversation, offering nothing. Not even your eyes. That night, you fall ill. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it's poison honey. Accidents happen. Or maybe your body has simply had enough. You vomit in the garden. You faint during morning chores. No one rushes to help you. Yasira sends broth, but she does not come. The newer concubines avoid your chamber. You're bad luck now. Like a cracked statue left in the courtyard to weather. A physician visits, not the royal one. A tired man with unwashed hands and a bottle of vinegar. He prescribes quiet, rest, and no more court appearances. You're sent to the outer wing. Not quite exile, not quite hospice. A quiet place where retired servants go. You share space with a cook who's lost her hearing and a musician whose hands now tremble. It's peaceful in its own way, but isolating. You begin to talk to birds. Historians still debate whether concubines had exit plans, whether retirement was a real possibility or a polite fiction. In your case, it feels like erasure. One chambermaid calls you Master Nobody behind your back. You laugh when you hear it. Not bitterly, just tired. Once, a child wanders into the corridor chasing a cat. She sees you and shrieks, startled by your pale, thin frame. You were once the embodiment of beauty. Now you look like a haunted portrait. You still have your memories, though. That's something. Sometimes you whisper them into the stone walls. There was a boy named Anwar. You murmur. He liked candied oranges. The walls don't reply, but you feel lighter every time you speak. The young dancer, the one who replaced you, is now the court's favorite. You hear his name everywhere. His perfume trails through hallways you're no longer allowed to walk. You don't resent him, not exactly. But you sometimes hope he finds a way out before 20-6. Rainy afternoon. You receive a letter, hand-delivered. No seal. It's from the scribe. He says he's compiled your observations into a mirror. Text, a kind of private manual for surviving court life. He thanks you for your wisdom, calls your words quiet armor. You weep, quietly, not because of the flattery, but because someone remembered you as more than a body. You sit with that letter for hours, tracing the ink with your finger. It's the first thing in years that feels real. And then, just when you think you've been forgotten entirely, the Duke sends another message. He wants to see you again. You refuse. There is no punishment. Just silence. That night, you fall into the deepest sleep you've had in years. You wake slower these days. Your limbs ache like old wood creaking, not from age, but from everything they've carried. The air in your chamber smells of herbs and dust. A servant forgets your name again. This time, you don't correct her. Your body is failing. There's no ceremony. No announcement. Just a quiet fading, like the last ripple of perfume after someone's left the room. The cook in the next room dies one morning, no funeral. Just her sandals left by the door for a week before someone takes them. You wonder if that will be you. And yet, you're still alive. Still whispering memories into empty corridors. Still eating your broth, slowly. Still watching the shadows crawl along the wall, guessing what time it is by how they stretch like lazy dancers. One afternoon, Yasira visits. Her walk is slower now, her eyes cloudier. But she still commands the air around her. She sits beside you without a word, takes your hand. You haven't been touched gently in years, she whispers. You lasted longer than most. That night, you dream of fig trees, of laughter, of wind across open fields you barely remember. You wake with tears in your eyes and don't bother to wipe them. Days pass, then silence. Your cough deepens. You stop getting up to eat. No one checks in. You hear music from the main hall, once a song you used to sing. The memory makes your breath catch. No one says it. But you know, this is the end. You begin writing your own name in the air with a shaky finger, over and over, as if trying to make it real. As if trying to ensure that somewhere in this vast place of marble and masks, you leave a trace. One morning, the servant arrives and finds you still, peaceful, no signs of struggle. Just your body, curled like a question mark, lips parted slightly as though you'd been about to whisper a secret. There is no tombstone, no record in the royal archives. Just a brief mention in a kitchen log. One former attendant, deceased. No ceremony. Your body is wrapped in linen and buried behind the stables, under a tree that bears no fruit. The scribe remembers. Quietly, he lights a candle once a year. Reads your name, yes, your real name, from the back of his manuscript. No one else listens. But he speaks it anyway, because that's how you live on, not in statues, not in songs, but in the softest kind of memory. The torches fade. The palace falls silent again. And your story, your small, beautiful, devastating story, folds gently into the hush of forgotten lives. The curtains close without applause. But you've earned more than a standing ovation. You've earned peace. The air cools as night deepens. The perfume of fig leaves and myrrh drifts faintly past your dreams. Somewhere a boy pours wine with trembling hands, and somewhere else another boy hides a flower beneath his robe, not knowing yet how dangerous that will be. But for now, for this last moment, everything is still. So breathe slower. Let your chest rise gently, then fall. The kind of breath that isn't rushed or watched or stolen. You are safe now. Out of the palace. Out of the performance. And if anyone ever asks where you went, tell them the truth. You faded like a whisper, but never fully disappeared. Sleep well, friend.